LinkedIn is great at connecting you with the world's largest professional network. But it can't connect you with motivation on a Monday morning. LinkedIn can help you get insights from your professional community. But it can't give you any insight into why Dave's still talking on mute. And while it can't stop your boss from bringing tuna for lunch, LinkedIn can help bring your career to the next level. LinkedIn is the network that works for you. Visit LinkedIn.com to learn more.
You have one new message. Translating. Disney and Pixar's Hoppers is now available on Disney+.
You could say that again.
Critics are calling it Pixar's funniest movie ever and a wildly entertaining ride. Blizzard Potato. It's certified fresh and verified hot.
Now we party.
This is incredible!
Wow, I am clearing the rest of the day.
Disney and Pixar's Hoppers, now available on Disney+. Rated PG.
Welcome back to I Want That Too, the podcast where Disney merch meets Disney history. I'm entertainment writer Jim Hill, and as always, I'm joined by the now tanned and rested, lovely Lauren Hersey. You're just back from Florida, right?
Yeah, back from Florida. I think our definitions of rested are a little different because I think I'm still exhausted from that whirlwind trip. Okay. But it was lovely. But you've been getting some R&R of your own, right? You're reading a new book, or you got laying out on the hammock, or what are you doing?
Well, no. What Lauren is talking about is, I want to say on one of the earliest editions of this podcast we did, we talked about how Disney was attempting to turn the Golden Girls, again, sitcom from the 1980s, Disney's first success in television after Eisner came on board, into a series of mystery novels. And last year, they put the first book in the series, Murder by Cheesecake, that was done by Rachel Ekstrom Courage, and that turned into a New York Times bestseller. So what happened? June 2nd of this year, we got the second book in the series, Death on the Lanai, which I want to say is a riff on Death on the Nile, the Hercule Poirot story that Agatha Christie wrote back in the day. But yeah, first of all, I got to go buy a hammock if I'm supposed to sit in a hammock and read this thing. But thought I'd mention that, and also did a little shopping at Target yesterday. And Lauren wanted to talk about these Disney fan snacks. Have you heard about these things?
No, okay. I have not. Which is, I keep up on my snacks, so.
All right. Well, the gimmick of the fan snacks is they are Disney character shaped. Like, for example, there are the Stitch mango chili tortilla chips, or the Grogu shaped outer rim branch, flavored chips, and.
Okay.
But the thing of it is they actually have Darth Vader corn chips that are shaped like Darth Vader's helmet, but they're black. I mean, just solid black. And nothing says snacking to me like, oh, let me dig into a big bowl of salsa with a solid black chip.
Aren't there like blue chips that like navy blue tortilla chips? Isn't that a thing? So they're not that different, I guess.
But this is Darth Vader black.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, is it going to stain your teeth?
There you go. There we go. And the other thing I want to briefly talk up is Toy Story 5 arrives in theaters. In fact, the day this podcast goes live on the 18th, it will be beginning previews that night, the Thursday night previews. And when you see this film, folks, you're going to eventually bump into Blaze. She's the little girl that Molly befriends over the course of Toy Story 5. But Blaze has a pet pig called Ginormous, and this pig is in fact ginormous. And what startled me at Target, as I was shopping, is that they had a bin of Ginormous, and it was like, Lauren, this plush is 24 inches long, a foot high, and 36 inches wide.
Wow!
Just to amuse myself, I picked it up and put it in the cart. By the way, it's $48, but there was no room in the cart after I put Ginormous in. I could either buy the plush or I could get a groceries. So sadly, Ginormous was left behind at Target. But if we have any pig fans out there, you now have a new option.
All right. I could just picture like a mom pushing a cart and then a little kid pushing a cart with just a giant pig in it.
There we go. But speaking of pigs, which brings us to Miss Piggy, and you, when you were in Florida, actually got to experience the new rock and roller coaster, right?
Yes. Got to experience. So I was trying to hit a lot of the experiences that, have opened since the last time we were there. Because remember, this was the first year ever since like 2014. We didn't have a pass last year because we'd planned on our big Disneyland, Vegas, and then Paris. And Paris didn't work out. So we're back to being pass holders down there. So rock and roller coaster starring the Muppets was top of the list. Animation Courtyard, got to do Better Together and Big Thunder Mountain and Buzz. So we're going again in 3 weeks-ish time to knock out the rest of the list of, new-ish things at Disney World. But I am going to talk a little bit about the merch because we've got on the show today a deep-cut Muppets character that is finally getting some merch love, and I'm sure you can tell us about this character. We're going to be talking about a surprising Disney meets Marvel crossover that was at Disney Springs, a new Walt Disney World, new to me at least, souvenir that turns like your vacation into a game. I thought it was so cool. Plus, we're going to be taking a look at some fresh park merch designed to celebrate the little moments that every Disney fan knows by heart. And I was there as they were putting the merch on the shelf. So, and then in today's feature, Jim is taking us behind the scenes of Disney's long history of trying to celebrate Mickey Mouse in bigger and better ways, including a few ideas that never made it off the drawing board. But before we get into all of that, we did want to give you a quick thank you for listening and being here with us week after week. And one of the best ways that you can continue to support the show is by leaving a rating or review whenever you're listening. It really does help other Disney fans find us and let us know what you want to hear us talk about on future episodes. And if you're looking for a little bit more Disney history and bonus content, be sure that you're checking out Jim Hill Media over on Patreon for ad-free episodes and exclusive extras. But Jim, on that note?
Yeah, on that note, we also should acknowledge that this episode of I Want That Too is brought to you by our friends at unlockedmagic.com, your go-to source for great deals on Disney and Universal tickets. And if a trip to the parks is on your radar for 2026, head on over to Unlocked Magic and let their team help you make your next vacation just a little bit more magical. Okay, so we now move to merch that you saw at in the post-show area of what is it? Rock and Roller Coaster starring the Muppets, right?
Yes. Okay, so we talked a little bit about the merch that was shared online, but I made a special trip there through the back entrance, up the big ramp, just to look at the merch even before I experienced the ride. And I mean, this is like a Muppet lover's paradise. And I have to say, they have this really cool mural on the wall, and there's like footprints on the ground that you can step on. There's like the lead singer, the backup singer, the drummer, the number one fan. It's a very, very cool experience. And I finally got my Muppets keychain. Remember I talked about how they dropped this Muppet stuff on TikTok first? But you would not believe, they're either sold out of Animal or I can't imagine that they wouldn't have had an Animal keychain, and they're big. I mean, my Kermit is probably at least maybe a foot long, 10 inches foot long. So they're big, but I was happy to see those items there for purchase. There was a whole section dedicated. I mean, Animal's kind of like the star of this merch line, I think, but you had like Miss Piggy in her leather jacket, and you have all the Kermit ears. So it was a really, really cool experience. But one of the things I did not not see there was this Uncle Deadly. And around the same time we're traveling, I saw that this line of Uncle Deadly-inspired Muppets merch was debuting in Mickey's of Glendale, which means that there might be a chance that we all get to see this maybe around Halloween. So this came out at the Halloween halfway point. And for those people that don't know Uncle Deadly, Jim, what do you know about Uncle Deadly?
Well, Uncle Deadly, boy, you're not wrong. Uncle Deadly is definitely a deep cut. That they introduced him as the Phantom of the Muppet Theater. And how long ago was that? Holy cow. Uncle Deadly, over the last couple of years, has kind of been reimagined. Okay. He's now mostly associated with Miss Piggy. He tends to be her aide-de-camp, her confidant. He's the one who helps dress her and gossips with her and that sort of thing. But he's definitely come to the front over the past couple of years and developed quite a fan base. But, geez, so they literally have a Uncle Deadly merch?
A line. And so as far as I could tell, this is the first time that there's been any exclusive Uncle Deadly merch. And so there are some patches and pins. There's a spirit jersey, like a crossbody. And I believe, doesn't this look like Haunted Mansion, like adjacent?
Well, remember that, it wasn't all that long ago that we actually had the Muppets Haunted Mansion special. It was done for Disney Plus, and Uncle Deadly was front and center in that. These days, he started off as a Jerry Nelson character. These days, he's mostly done by Matt Vogel, but Matt has a lot of fun with Uncle Deadly. But yeah, let's take a look at some of this merch, though.
I wonder if we're going to see any of this at D23, like with Mickey's of Glendale. Because, we've talked about it before, but Mickey's of Glendale, that's the Imagineering employees store. But they do have, like, pop-ups periodically, and they definitely have a big presence at D23, the Fan Expo. So I'm wondering if we'll get to see any of this live and in person.
I hope so. More to the point, wouldn't it be cool if Uncle Deadly himself turned up? Because that's the thing. Uncle Deadly is very much about fashion, given his association with Miss Piggy. So I would imagine he'd have something to say about all this merch.
Yeah. All right. So on to the next. I just wanted to talk about this because I thought it was really cool. And, I'm assuming within our audience, we got a lot of like collectors, and collectors typically, like, I think that you want to like finish your collection, and that's a part of the fun. So I saw this water bottle at the Emporium on Main Street, and it is a big water bottle. It's actually under the brand Discover the Magic, and it comes with a bag of stickers that are themed to attractions, food, experiences from across the Walt Disney World Resort. And I thought, like, how cool would this be for either, if you were new to the parks, like grabbing one of these when you get there and adding stickers kind of as you go and have the experiences, but something that you can bring back over and over and over again. Like if you have a checklist mentality, isn't this cool?
It is. And what I find intriguing about this is rather than say, you go to the venue and they hand you the sticker. Disney provides you with the sticker. So, you can do this yourself as opposed to seeking out the cast member at the entrance of the exit to get the sticker that then shows that you did this. So you're kind of on the honor system here.
Well, I mean, like, it's your water bottle. It's not like you buy you do the experiences at Epcot where you've got to go find things. On the, within the Disney community, people are kind of complaining a little bit that they don't sell the sheets of stickers like separately. So somebody, scratched their water bottle when they got home and they wanted a replacement sticker. You're kind of on your own there. But people were recommending, like, when you get home, like, decoupage or something like that to seal the stickers, because if you are going to wash the water bottle, like, you got to think of all of that. But Eric always said, he would have loved to create an app, like, for the, checklist mentality person with all of, like, the food and attractions and shows and resorts, just to say all the places that you've been and what you've done, and get a clear picture of all the things you haven't done yet. So I really, really enjoyed this. It was $39.99. That includes the white bottle and the stickers. I only saw it this trip at the Emporium, but I'm sure it's scattered around the resort.
Okay. Cool. All right. Moving to your next discovery from this trip, and it's like, wow. I there's a part of me that thinks this is ingenious, but on the other hand, if you really lean into the idea that Lauren's about to discuss, this could get pricey. Let's talk about this. Logo Mania.
Yes. So I was there at Epcot when they were putting this out, and I immediately was like, oh, this is going to be huge. So there are 6 new Logo Mania merch collections, and they're built around a monochromatic, like, color palette. So the colors that we have are pink, blue, yellow, orange, green, and black. And the black was kind of separate from the display that I was looking at. I immediately thought, because, June is Pride Month, that maybe this was a part of, like, a Pride collection. But, obviously anybody could purchase. And so I asked a cast member, and she said, no, not really. More just for summer. So maybe they're trying this out for summer. What I did not know at the time when I was seeing all of this being put out is each color has a different theme. And so the green collection is the tiki room. And then we got blue, which is the last day of trip blues. I thought that one was the cutest.
No, I mean, I have to say, forgive me, I'm interrupting as Lauren walks us to the list, but that one right there, I can see a lot of people immediately embracing. The last day of trip blues. Boy, that's genius.
Yeah, and they had, like, a journal and stuff that said, like, the last day of trip blues. So maybe it would encourage you to write about your experience. So it's not the exact same things for each, like, merch line, which I thought was really cool. Moving on to Hot Pink, which was Fantasyland Feels. Then there were Park Hoppers that inspired, like, the orange collection, and that one has monorail iconography. And then the black was Celebrate Evening Fireworks, so it's Park After Dark. Then we got the Butter Yellow collection, which, like, Butter Yellow is, like, trending right now, says my teenager, which is, like, that light, pretty yellow. So I'm kind of surprised they called this, like, a Butter Yellow, which is popcorn on Main Street. So from what I understand, these collections are also going to be available at Disneyland, but the black and yellow are exclusive to Disney World, which is, like, a limited release. I thought it was also odd that the black black was kind of, it was in the same vicinity, but it wasn't like with all of the bright colors. And I honestly, like, initially thought 2 years ago, they rolled out that black and white line of Disney World merch. Like, I have the backpack. It's the best park backpack. I've talked about it on the show before. And that was so successful that they tried other solids, but apparently not. So I'm really excited about it. It could definitely get pricey if you want to collect everything within a color palette.
Yeah, I mean, for example, looking at the end of trip blues thing, there's mouse ears, there's a plush, there's a water bottle, there what looks like to be a bag, and is that a sweatshirt or a spirit jersey?
Yeah, I think it's a spirit jersey.
Okay.
And there's more to the lines than what you're seeing on the photos. It was really I mean, each color had a fairly large spread, and it looked like maybe like, so pink had an entire wall, where like the buttery yellow had it like more of an end cap. Okay. So they kind of, I think, have an idea of what's going to sell. But I will tell you, the women were out in full force, and I think that I think this one, they could have a hit on their hands.
Okay. I'm going to be intrigued to see the first influencer that really leans into this and does the big buy and broadcasts their trip, so to speak, moving through, the color palette, and can't wait to see them on the last day dressed all in blue.
Yes, well, something that is totally different, that I think this is, I think that will be more mainstream, and I think this could be more of like, not a deep cut, but there's a certain type of person that would appreciate this merch. But I had to ask you, so there was this Marvel-inspired Disney character t-shirt line that came out at Disney Springs while I was down there. And it's kind of different. Like, they have like Minnie Mouse as Captain Marvel, and is it like Donald as Thor? Yeah, so we got a Miss Minutes, which is just so cute, from Loki.
Oh yeah, from Loki. Always glad to see her back. But these other ones, these all key off of the Marvel What If series, right?
Yeah, so I'm curious, Jim, with the relationships and what they're contractually allowed to do with Marvel characters in the park. Like, how is this happening at Disney Springs?
Well, okay. Now, what's kind of intriguing is that merch exists in an entirely different space than, say, the physical characters walking around the Disney theme parks. In fact, it's interesting you bring this up because, of course, we are just a few weeks out now from the next Sony Spider-Man movie, Brand New Day. And what was fascinating in talking with friends at Disney is, again, yes, that's a Sony movie, but we are going to make so much damn money on the back of that through selling a new wave of Spider-Man merch. Yes. And that goes straight into Disney's pocket. So, again, something like this where it's the what if, which a lot of folks these days know from the acclaimed animated series over on Disney Plus. But the what if comics existed for years, and these are all the graphics that are on the front of these T-shirts are all comic book covers, only with the Disney characters appeering as classic Marvel characters. Donald as Thor and Minnie as Captain Marvel and the like. So
that all makes sense then, how there is actually a superhero headquarters store at Disney Springs if Disney is owning the merch piece.
Yeah, and also remember, that if you're really paying attention how Disney handles things, like, for example, out in California, they don't have a Marvel Land. can't use the name Marvel inside of a theme park, but they can have an Avengers campus. And there are Disney lawyers who have spent hours upon hours parsing this out so that they're not in violation of, the master licensing agreement that Universal has for the Marvel characters out down in Florida. And they literally, got to the point where they measured the distance from Universal Florida over to Disney Springs, which is why, it's like, all right, it's this far away, we can do that store, and it's just, it is just so funny.
It's fascinating. Okay, Jim, so if Mickey Mouse was going to be a Marvel superhero, which one would you like to see on the front of a t-shirt?
Oh, that would be hard. Classic, again, you've got Donald and Minnie doing classic characters, so you kind of feel like Mickey should be in there, but at the same time, you don't want him as Spidey, you don't want him as Iron Man, because that's Mickey's face behind a mask.
What about Captain
tough.
America? It's America's 250, all the synergies.
All right, that would work. And you get a little bit of Mickey's face, and he could have the ears. Okay, I could do that.
Maybe for his birthday that's coming up in 2 years that we're talking about, right?
There we go. Listen to that very smooth transition there, folks. And okay, when we get back from this break, we're going to continue our conversation about Mickey and his birthday celebrations that have been held over the years, thanks to the Walt Disney Company. But before we do that, there's this.
The 2026 FIFA World Cup meal at McDonald's is underway with one of 9 legendary cups in the lineup. Christian Pulisic, David Beckham, Lamine Yamal, Ronaldinho, Thierry Henry, Son Heung-min, Alphonso Davies, Santi Jimenez. And between the posts, it's Grimace. Get one of 9 collectible cups with a FIFA World Cup meal.
At participating McDonald's for a limited time while supplies last. All rights reserved. 2026 McDonald's at FIFA World Cup 2026.
Study and play come together on a Windows 11 PC. And for a limited time, college students get the best of both worlds. Get the Unreal College Deal. Everything you need to study and play with select Windows 11 PCs. Eligible students get a year of Microsoft 365 Premium and a year of Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with a custom color Xbox wireless controller. Learn more at windows.com/student offer. While supplies last. Ends June 30th. Terms at aka.ms/collegepc.
This episode is brought to you by Prime. What if you had one more chance with the one that got away?
Sam, you came home.
Based on the best-selling novel from Carly Fortune. Every Year After follows childhood friends Sam and Percy as they reunite in the dreamy, nostalgic lakeside town of Barry's Bay.
Love can be hard to find. So if you're lucky enough to find that person, never let go.
A second chance at first love. Every Year After, now streaming only on Prime.
And we're back. Okay, folks, on the last I Want That Too, Lauren and I were talking about how the Disney Company had celebrated Mickey's birthday in the past. Remember, in 2028, we have this character's centennial celebration coming up, 100 years of Mickey Mouse. And on last week's show, we talked about what the company did back in 78 for Mickey's 50th. We particularly talked about that commemorative plaque at the Broadway Theater in New York. By the way, some theater employees have reached out. I want to say, is it The Great Gatsby, I guess, that's being staged here now.
Did they find, where is it? Did we find out?
Well, that's the thing. They went looking around the theater and reported back in. It's like, okay, it's not displayed publicly, and looked around in various places backstage. So I'm beginning to think maybe it's time to reach out to the city and say, hey, did that ever come back from the cleaning? But again, all right. So the Disney Company, again, has tried previously to do some special things for Mickey's birthday. For example, back in 1936, Walt decided that for Mickey's 10th birthday, which was going to be in 1938, that he'd create a brand new short for theatrical release that would then be built around Paul Dukas' orchestral piece, The Sorcerer's Apprentice. And now, mind you, Lauren, it takes Walt till July of 37 to actually acquire the movie rights to this orchestral piece, and he also wants Mickey to look his very best for this special 10th anniversary thing. So he has Freddie Moore, the gentleman who was just coming off of working on the dwarfs for Snow White at that point. He has him redesign Mickey to make him as appealing as possible. And this is actually when Mickey went from having pie eyes to human-like pupils, more of a human-like face. Then Walt decides, well, you know, we spent all this money on Sorcerer's Apprentice, the Dukas score. We need this to sound as good as possible. So he hires Leopold Stokowski and his Philadelphia Orchestra to record the soundtrack for The Sorcerer's Apprentice. And Lauren, this is a 105 to 110 piece orchestra. So by the time you factor in Mickey's redesign and the cost of hiring a full orchestra to record the soundtrack of Sorcerer's Apprentice, the cost of the special 10th anniversary Mickey Mouse short is astronomical. I mean, it's gotten to the point where it's going to cost so much to make, there's no way it's going to recover its production costs as just a standalone short. So this is why Walt decides to turn The Sorcerer's Apprentice into a feature, an entire film that would be built around animated versions of classical musical pieces. And this is where we get Fantasia. But the downside is, by deciding to add all of these extra bits to the film, they don't complete it in time. Well, it gets released to theaters November of 1940, and it misses Mickey's 10th birthday by 2 years. But Walt is undeterred. You know, he said, hang on, I got another idea. We got Mickey's 15th birthday coming up in 1943, and the studio had previously done 2 shorts. There was Giant Land. This is a black and white Mickey Mouse short from November of 33. And then The Brave Little Tailor, and that's a Technicolor Mickey Mouse short, got released in September 38. And in both of these films, Mickey battled giants, and these Mickey Mouse shorts were enormously popular with moviegoers in the 30s. So Walt is like, okay, I know what we're going to do here. We're going to do a feature-length version of the classic grim fairy tale Jack and the Beanstalk, but we're going to have Mickey play Jack. Now, what's especially cool about this project, Lauren, by the way, it's called The Legend of Happy Valley. That's because Jack and the Beanstalk, they had to change the name for copyright reasons. The name Jack and the Beanstalk and the overall story of this grim fairy tale had already slipped into the public domain at this point. So they start work in May of 1940, and it's designed from the get-go to be, well, not just a film that showcases Mickey, but it's also going to, it's going to be all of the Disney characters. Take, for example, when, the part in the story of Jack and the Beanstalk where Jack goes to the marketplace and gets tricked out of his cow and is sold magic beans. The characters that were going to trick Mickey were Jay Worthington Foulfellow and Gideon the Fox and the Cat from Pinocchio, which I thought that was a cool detail. But anyway, film being prepped as a full-length animated feature, and again, with the goal of sending it out in the theaters November 1943 to celebrate Mickey's 15th birthday. Film goes into production in May of 41. Previous year had been spent writing, storyboarding, designing the film. And after 6 months, Lauren, they have 50 minutes of this animated feature completed. And by the way, other interesting thing about this project, Pinocchio and Fantasia, which had come out the previous year, February and November of 1940, respectively, they cost a lot of money to make, and they actually lost money for the studio. So Walt makes this deliberate decision like, okay, we're gonna, we've learned from our mistake, or we're still gonna make important big movies like Bambi, which would eventually arrive in theaters in 42. But in between, we're going to make shorter, less expensive to make films like, say, Dumbo. When Dumbo gets released to theaters in October of 41. And the second film in this series of cheaper, shorter films was going to be Disney's animated version of Jack and the Beanstalk. But here's the thing. December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor happens. Following day, America enters World War II. And on that day, Lauren, December 8th, 1941, a gunnery unit from the Army Air Corps rolls up to the Disney lot in Burbank and proceeds to set up shop. And it's deliberately been sent by the U.S. government to the Disney lot because just up the street from Disney is a Lockheed plant. And the thinking at the time was, well, look, the Japanese just attacked the U.S. fleet when it was at anchor in Honolulu Harbor. And so if they did that, it's only a matter of time before long-range bombers cross the Pacific and then start attacking targets in L.A. And so we need to do something to make sure this Lockheed plant is protected. Because, what they're doing, creating aircraft, is vital to America's war effort. So, long story short, Disney Studios suddenly has to put a lot of stuff on hold because, the Army Air Corps is set up shop there. And among the things that get put on hold to this point is The Legend of Happy Valley. And by the way, Disney artists and animators in the meantime start producing training films for the U.S. military. Anyway, we jump ahead now to August of 45. The Japanese have surrendered. World War II is finally ended. And Disney Studios can now transition back from making training films to actually making animated features and shorts for theatrical release. And so Walt's like, ooh, all right, let's pick up production of The Legend of Happy Valley. But Roy, Walt's brother, turns to Walt and says, we have no money to finish this film in the way you originally intended. And by the way, that other thing you were making, Bongo, this is about a unicycle riding bear that escapes the circus. By the way, Lauren, once upon a time, this was actually considered to be a sequel to Dumbo. In fact, it was going to be the third cheaper to make movie following Dumbo and The Legend of Happy Valley. But Walt, the Disney Studios needs product out in theaters because they need that ticket revenue.
Right.
So here's the thing. They have 15 minutes of The Legend of Happy Valley that's been completed, and they have a chunk of Bongo that's done. And Walt holds his nose and slaps these two together and creates what Disney used to call a package feature. And this film, entitled Fun and Fancy Free, it goes out into theaters in September of 1947. And this is the sad part of the story. I mean, you have this thing that Walt originally put into production because it's supposed to be a starring vehicle for Mickey Mouse, supposed to celebrate his 15th birthday. It gets sent out into theaters, half-completed form. And Walt can't even afford to wait to send it out into theaters till November of 48, and that would have been when Disney was celebrating Mickey's 20th birthday. They need the money now, so that's why Fun and Fancy Free, whether it's ready or not, got sent out into theaters in September of 1947. But upside of the story, Lauren, is that Fun and Fancy Free actually makes enough money when it arrives in theaters that Disney then has the money it needs to start production of Cinderella. And it was when that movie arrived in theaters in March of 1950 and then became this absolute smash hit. It was a second only to Snow White. That flood of cash is what made it possible for Walt to build the family fun park out in among those orange groves in Anaheim. So ultimately, in a way, it was an aborted celebration of Mickey's 15th birthday celebration that made Disneyland possible. And By the way, what eventually became renamed Mickey and the Beanstalk, it played on the Disneyland TV show as a standalone episode back in '55. The company also put it out there now in color on the Wonderful World of Walt Disney Wonderful World color in '63. And it's always been popular, Lauren. It's just never the way Walt wanted it. But speaking of the 60s, in a minute, we'll talk about Mickey Mouse's 60th birthday celebration. But first, this.
This episode is brought to you by Redfin. You're listening to a podcast, which means you're probably multitasking. Maybe even scrolling home listings on Redfin, saving homes without expecting to get them. But Redfin isn't just built for endless browsing. It's built to help you find and own a home. With agents who close twice as many deals, when you find the one, you've got a real shot at getting it. Get started at redfin.com. Own the dream.
If you've ever blasted synth beats from your boombox or burned CDs for your besties, this one's for you. As people get older, much like their music tastes, their health needs change. AG1 is the simple daily health drink designed to deliver over 75 essential daily nutrients and pre- and probiotics to support energy, digestion, and mood, so you can make the most out of every decade and dance break. Learn more at drinkag1.com.
And we're back. All right, Lauren, on last week's I Want That Too, we talked about Mickey's 50th, which was held back in '78. Back then, the Disney company still had its original management team. Ron Miller, Walt's son-in-law, was in charge of the studio. But if we jump ahead 6 years, Ron Miller is out. Michael Eisner is in as the brand new big cheese at the Mouse House. And he's been brought in to shake things up at Disney. And this is the thing. Michael is looking at all of Disney's assets at this time. And he's like, all right, yeah, Disney has beloved characters, but they're old. And, we need to find out ways to put these characters out there. So, kind of like Uncle Deadly. So what do? They do things like they take supporting characters from Donald Duck's world, like Scrooge McDuck and Donald's nephews, Huey, Dewey, and Louie, and they get their own animated series, DuckTales, debuts in syndication September of '87. Huge hit. Mickey and Donald, on the other hand, are considered the crown jewels of the company. And so Donald, for example, is allowed to cameo in the original version of DuckTales, but he can't be a regular character. The belief is within the company that it would undermine his value. Now, mind you, Mickey and Donald are both allowed to have prominent roles in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which, by the way, is released to theaters some 9 months after DuckTales' debut in September of '88. But to give you some idea of how important Mickey and Donald are, in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, each of them are paired with their Warner Brothers equivalent. Mickey appears with Bugs Bunny, Donald appears with Daffy Duck, and Lauren, the negotiation between Disney and Warner's to have these characters appear on screen at the exact same time. Mickey and Bugs, as well as Donald and Daffy, had to have the exact same number of lines. In fact, evidently, there was a lawyer who literally counted the words in each line, and it's like, well, Daffy needs another word here. But that Robert Zemeckis film is a huge hit. And Mickey's birthday celebration is held in the fall of that year, 1988, and the company decides, well, look what happened with Roger. Let's do a Roger Rabbit-like TV special, which will put Mickey Mouse out in the real world with stars of the 1980s. And so now, where this gets interesting, Lauren, is in January of this year, 1988, Disney had just switched from having its Sunday night movie from ABC. They switched over to NBC. And NBC, to thank Disney for doing this, for bringing that show over to NBC, offered for this Mickey birthday special, you can have every star from every hit show we have on this network Spielberg on your Mickey Mouse special. So we're talking The Cosby Show, L.A. Law, Golden Girls, Cheers, and even Roger Rabbit stars in this thing, which, by the way, you can watch on YouTube right now, folks. Downside is, I'm not going to lie, the animation was rushed. Honestly, doesn't look that great. The shadows and the interaction that made the original Robert Zemeckis film such a wonder couldn't be done on this tight a production schedule. And also, Lauren, I'm going to love to get your take on the 1980s hip, casual version of Mickey Mouse. I mean, they have him dressed in a tuxedo, but he's also got white tennis shoes on. I mean, it's just sort of like, well, okay, he's hip and casual. By the way, in the same window of time, this is when Mickey's Birthday Land gets built down in Florida at the Magic Kingdom. Yes. Worth noting, Lauren, originally only supposed to be up for 18 months. It was designed as a temporary land, and as Jim Shule will tell you, there's nothing quite so permanent as a temporary land as a Disney theme park. That, under several different names, Mickey's Starland, Mickey's Toontown Fair, wound up hanging in there at that theme park till February of 2011, and it was only pulled down to make way for the Magic Kingdom's new Fantasyland project. But anyway, we now jump ahead to 2003, and this is when Disney is looking for ways to celebrate Mickey's 75th birthday. And Michael Eisner, he's coming up on 20 years at Disney, and he feels like he wants to do right by the mouse, and so so he starts thinking about something along the lines of what Walt had planned back in '43 for Mickey's 15th birthday celebration. Again, that's a feature-length movie starring Mickey Mouse that would then be sent out into theaters, which brings us to The Search for Mickey Mouse. And weirdly, it has a lot in common with that TV special that Disney did for NBC back in '88 for Mickey's 60th. And the story of that, Lauren, and the gag that runs through this hour-long show is that Mickey goes missing. And, that's how he ends up, like, for example, wandering onto the set of Cheers, Anyway, so this project, again, is called The Search for Mickey Mouse, and it starts off with in the first 5 minutes, Mickey gets mouse-napped. And Minnie is, of course, frantic, and the police in Toontown, when they can't turn up any leads, well, who does Mickey's longtime girlfriend turn to but the great mouse detective, Basil of Baker Street? And I got to tell you, Lauren, when they pitched this concept to Michael Eisner, he reportedly loved this idea because, well, The Great Mouse Detective was literally one of the very first projects that Eisner greenlit when he arrived at Disney back in September of '84. In fact, in Tom Sito's brand new book, Drawing Life Back into Animation, A Personal Journey Through the Toon Renaissance of 1990, Tom talks about the actual day that Disney Animation Bernie Mattinson, and by the way, Bernie's the guy who had directed Mickey's Christmas Carol back in 1983. Also, for all of you folks out there who've seen that wonderful live-action animated thing that Disney did for the Studio Centennial, Once Upon a Studio, he's the older gentleman, who walks out the door, who turns around and says, "If these walls could talk." At that point, in fact, when we lost Bernie in February of 2023 at the age of 97, the company was about to award him his 70th year award. That's how long he'd worked for Disney Studios. Anyway, in Sito's new animation history book, Tom takes us back to September 23rd, 1984. I mean, Michael Eisner is literally on like his second or third day at Disney. And this is the day that Bernie takes his brand new bosses. And this is Michael Eisner, Frank Wells, Jeffrey Katzenberg, and Peter Schneider, the head of Disney Animation Studio. He takes them around Disney's old feature animation building. And over the course of 3 hours, he pitches them the entire story for The Great Mouse Detective. And, when that's all over, Michael turns to Bernie and says, "Yeah, I like that story. I like these characters. Okay, let's make this movie." And this is when Walt's nephew, Roy E. Disney, who's been following this group to the building, walks up to Bernie and it's like, you just saved Disney feature animation. And that's a part of the story that, a lot of people these days don't understand how Eisner and Wells, when they first arrive at Disney, they're looking over the assets that the company has and it's like, well, geez, we got enough of their classic animated features in the vault that we can re-release these things for years to come. So, if we're serious about wanting to lower production costs here at Disney Studios, we can just shutter feature animation. But Bernie did a good enough job pitching Basil Baker Street that he persuades Eisner and Wells and Katzenberg to keep the place open at least long enough to make one new feature-length movie. Anyway, Great Mouse Detective comes out July of 86. That's less than 21 months after Bernie pitches it to Michael, by the way. Gets great reviews, does decent box office. And by then, Eisner has decided, okay, we'll stay in the feature animation business. They've already put a follow-up film, Oliver and Company, into production, and that opens in theaters in November of 88. But one last little note about Eisner and Great Mouse Detective. Later in life, Michael reportedly said that if he had his druthers, he would have spiked Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, and that's the animated series that Disney Television Animation created and sent out into the syndication in March of 89. And he said, if I'd been smart, I would have made a TV show built around Basil of Baker Street and Dr. Dawson. It said that those were two great characters. They deserved more time in the spotlight. So this is what The Search for Mickey Mouse was going to do. Minnie was going to hire Basil Baker Street and Dr. Dawson, and then joining Donald, Goofy, and Pluto, they were going to travel the world in search of Mickey. And this brings us to another fun gimmick of this project, Lauren, the Search for Mickey Mouse. Basil of Baker Street, along with these other Disney characters, were supposed to visit the setting of every major Disney animated film that had been made since the 1930s. So they would go to India and they'd talk to Baloo the bear from the Jungle Book. And they'd go to France and they'd visit, the Duchess and her kittens from the Aristocats. And they would have gone to the United Kingdom and they'd stopped at the Darling House and talked with Wendy, Michael, and John, and and gone to the 100-Acre Woods and interviewed Pooh and Piglet, and that's what was going to make this a cinematic event.
Yeah.
That in The Search for Mickey Mouse, you were supposed to get cameos by virtually every single Disney character in the history of the studio. Now, downside of doing that is to years later to now be animating these characters and making sure they're on model, that they look just like they did when they first appeared on the big screen in the 30s, the 40s, the 50s. That sort of animation, that was going to be expensive. And I'm not going to lie, there was also a battle internally at Disney about, well, who is going to make this? Is this going to be over at Feature Animation, or is this Home Entertainment that's going to be making this? And at the same time, as this project moves through development, they start in June of 2000, they keep running into the wall that they haven't been able to figure out how to make this a solid story, Lauren, something that holds together with action and emotion. It just feels like a stunt. It just becomes cameo after cameo after cameo. And what's fascinating about this is the thinking at Disney Studios that eventually became, look, Mickey deserves better than this for his 75th birthday. I mean, the movie literally has Mickey's name in it, The Search for Mickey Mouse. But for 95% of its screen time, Mickey is off screen. What sort of birthday celebration is this when the guest of honor is left out of the party for most of the movie? And so work continues on this thing till late 2002. And in the end, what Disney decided to do instead was produce Mickey, Donald, Goofy, the Three Musketeers. And this was a home premiere produced by Disney Toon Studios in Australia. They did the bulk of the animation. Directed by Donovan Cook. Eventually, again, arrives on store shelves in August of 2004. And Lauren, if you haven't seen it, it's a wonderful film. And it has a really for real story, and each of, Mickey, Donald, and Goofy are all given an arc and something to do, and it's a lot of fun. But the problem is this decision to change from the Search for Mickey Mouse to Mickey, Donald, Goofy, the Three Musketeers. Decision is made so late that they miss Mickey's 75th birthday celebration. It's still a good movie, though. All right, so bringing this to a close here, folks, I just want to say I'm hoping that the company does better with Mickey's Centennial Celebration. And I've been reaching out to friends of the studio to find out what's in the works for 2028. And I'm not going to lie, we're 18 months out from the start of this happening. And you have to remember Disney had a management change early this year when Bob Iger walked out the door and Josh D'Amaro became the new CEO. And suddenly they had to run all of this stuff by Josh D'Amaro to see what he liked. Look, Lauren, from your job in the really for real world, when you're talking about a major multinational media conglomerate that has, all of these divisions that have to coordinate their efforts, 18 months is what? A minute and a half, right?
Oh my gosh, 100%, yes.
Yeah. So the notion of this is the window of time they're trying to get Mickey's Centennial Celebration pulled together. And I'm just hoping it's an improvement over what happened with Disney's 50th anniversary celebration, which, remember, had been in development for 7 years, only to then get tripped up by COVID in 2020. And we basically only got a third of what was originally supposed to happen for Disney World's 50th anniversary celebration.
We did get the lights on Spaceship Earth. And I will stand on and say that is the best thing that was added so part of the 50th.
Yeah, and also the cheapest, but we've talked about that previously on this podcast. But anyway, there you go. So that's looking back at some of Mickey's birthday celebrations. So yeah, do yourself a favor, folks. You're looking for something fun to watch. Dig out Mickey and the Beanstalk and see what Walt wanted to do and didn't get completed the way he wanted. But on the other hand, we also have Mickey, Donald, Goofy, the Three Musketeers, which is great fun even today. 22 years after it debuted.
Yeah, so we will be anxiously awaiting what is to come for 2028. But if we're getting like Darth Vader chips right now, I would say this is going to be everywhere. We'll keep an eye on that. But on that note, I do think it's time to close up shop here today.
Absolutely. By the way, folks, if you want to keep up on everything happening across the Jim Hill Media Podcast Network, please follow us on social.
Yes, and if you have an idea for a future episode, we'd love to hear from you. Jim is at jim@jimhillmedia.com, and I'm at lauren@laurenhersey.com. And that does it for today's episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on I Want That Too.